Hey guys, if you were born a woman during World War II, you entered a world that didn't smell like talcum powder and warm towels, but more like damp wool, soot, and something slightly sour that no one could ever quite identify. You were probably delivered in a cramped back room during a blackout by a midwife whose fingernails were dark with grime and whose hands were washed, if you were lucky, with a quick splash of carbolic soap. There was no soft lullaby playing on a Bluetooth speaker, no hospital bracelet, no sterile white sheets. Instead, your tiny body was wrapped in a threadbare shawl that had already swaddled 4 siblings, all of them still alive, most of them still coughing. The walls around you trembled faintly with the distant hum of air raid sirens, and the windows were crisscrossed with tape to prevent the glass from shattering during bomb blasts. The first thing you inhaled wasn't the crisp scent of oxygen piped from a tank, but the musty mix of dust, mold, and Lysol that clung to everything. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you truly enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're born with a head full of black hair slicked to your scalp and cheeks smudged with birth fluids and London grime. Your mother is exhausted, her dress soaked through with sweat, the tension of wartime anxiety etched into the lines around her mouth. The midwife clamps the umbilical cord with a chipped metal clip and quickly wraps you up in a blanket that smells faintly of coal dust and damp stone. She doesn't coo or smile. She glances at the clock, mutters about missing her tea, and disappears just as quickly as she came. The light is low and yellowish, filtered through blackout curtains and a single dim bulb powered by an unreliable generator. You don't cry much. You can feel the tension in the air. Everyone around you is silent, listening for distant droning engines or the whistle of bombs. You're tiny, barely 6 pounds, but already stronger than anyone gives you credit for. Your first nap takes place in a battered wicker cradle pushed into the corner of a room crowded with sleeping siblings, ration boxes, and a makeshift clothesline draped with damp laundry. A rag doll with one eye sits propped beside you, her fabric body stained and her smile faded from years of handling. The warmth of your mother's arms is fleeting. She has to return to the munitions factory in 3 days, and maternity leave is considered more of a nuisance than a necessity. Your father is away, probably somewhere in North Africa or Italy, or gone without a trace. If he's lucky, he'll write home on stiff beige paper with thin blue lines, and your mother will read his letter aloud in a whisper, so the children don't ask too many questions. You won't remember him? Not really. He's a blurry shape in a photograph, a voice behind the crackle of a wireless broadcast. The house where you grow up is narrow, cold, and always slightly damp. There's peeling wallpaper in every room, and a bucket catching drips under the leaking ceiling. The toilet is outside in the garden shed, which makes every nighttime trip an exercise in courage and shivering. The air smells constantly of coal smoke and cabbage, with occasional sharp notes of antiseptic or turpentine when someone attempts to clean. You'll sleep in a narrow bed, shared with a sibling or 2, sometimes 3. And your mattress is stuffed with old straw or horsehair, which pokes through the thin ticking and scratches your legs. Your first toys are mostly made of fabric scraps and string, and every object in the house has a second or third life. Tin cans become toy soldiers, boxes become doll houses. There's a spoon with a twisted handle that's used to scoop out powdered milk, mix tea, and, when needed, serve as a makeshift teether. Everything smells vaguely of onions, soot, and damp wool. When you're a baby, cleanliness is something done to prevent disease, not to feel fresh. You're bathed once a week, if that, and always in the same water that's already been used by your siblings. If you're the youngest, which you are, that means you soak in lukewarm grayish soup of grime, floating lint, and a few suspicious flecks of who knows what. The bath water is heated in a giant kettle over a coal stove and poured into a dented zinc tub that sits in front of the fireplace. You might gurgle and splash, but mostly you try not to inhale. Your nappies aren't soft, hypoallergenic, or conveniently disposable. They're made from strips of cloth, mostly torn-up flour sacks or worn-out bed sheets that are folded and pinned into place with actual metal safety pins. They're stiff from being hand-washed with rationed soap and dried on a line strung above the stove. If it rains, they hang inside, draped from chairs or hooks, sending a sharp, ammonia-sour scent through the room. Wartime rationing affects everything, including your cleanliness. Soap is scarce, and laundry is an ordeal. Washing your nappies involves boiling water on the stove, stirring the diapers with a wooden spoon, like some grim stew, then wringing them out by hand until your mother's fingers are raw. You spend much of your early infancy with a faint rash on your bottom, and you learn not to cry about it, because frankly, there are bigger problems. You quickly develop the ability to nap through all manner of chaos. The sound of planes overhead, the distant crump of explosions, the murmur of neighbors arguing about sugar or coal rations. Occasionally, you're scooped up mid-nap and rushed to the shelter when sirens blare, wrapped tightly in a wool blanket and clutched tightly to your mother's chest. Down in the shelter, your nose wrinkles at the smell of mildew, sweat, and fear. But you're too young to know what any of it means. You just burrow your head into her neck and drift off again. By the time you're a toddler, you've accepted that filth is normal. The floorboards are gritty. Your feet are always a little dusty. The cuffs of your clothes are damp and darkened with grime. There's a constant layer of soot on the windowsills, and you've probably licked it once or twice while teething. You chew on anything within reach. Wooden spoons, chair legs, sometimes your own sleeve, which tastes like salt and dust and maybe a trace of coal tar. Despite all this, you're oddly sturdy. You develop a strong immune system, or you don't survive. It's as simple as that. There are no baby monitors, no wet wipes, no organic cotton. Just the persistent hum of danger, the creak of floorboards, and the steady rhythm of your mother's weary breathing. You were born into a world that smelled like boiled cabbage and fear, and somehow you learn to laugh anyway. You're still swaddled tight in your makeshift cradle, and even though the world around you is crumbling with ration books and sirens, you're growing. Slowly, steadily, stubbornly. But with that growth comes something less poetic, namely, the business of nappies. And yours aren't anything like the soft, absorbent, pastel-colored diapers of the future. No, yours are assembled with whatever cloth can be spared, sewn together from cast-off pillowcases, wartime flour sacks, or old undershirts, too thin to darn again. Your mother folds them with a precision that's born not out of pride, but out of sheer survival. And when she runs out of cloth, yesterday's newspaper will do. Headlines from the front lines get inked onto your rear end, pressed there by the pressure of your squirming legs, and the sad inevitability of gravity. Changing your diaper is not a cute bonding moment. It's a tactical operation. There's a heavy whiff of ammonia in the air, mingled with the tang of carbolic soap. And the process involves a wooden table, a chipped enamel basin, and the unwavering focus of a woman who hasn't had a full night's sleep since 1939. She doesn't flinch. She can wipe with one hand and pin with the other, all while balancing a pot of boiling milk with her elbow and shouting at the older children to stop drawing on the ration cards. There are no plastic covers. Instead, a second cloth layer is added to try and stem the inevitable leaks. It doesn't work. You wet through your clothes, the mattress, your sister's sleeve, and once even the family Bible. That one is still talked about in whispers. Your nappies are washed by hand in cold water, scrubbed against a wooden washboard, and boiled once a week, if the coal allowance permits. If not, they're hung on the line, still faintly stained, a badge of wartime honor fluttering in the breeze. The clothesline is a battlefield in itself. Each piece of laundry is clipped with wooden pegs and strung between two iron nails, hammered into the walls of a bombed-out backyard. Cats walk along the top of the fence. Crows perch ominously overhead. Your nappies flap like surrender flags against a grey sky. When it rains, and it often does, your mother pulls the line indoors, stringing it across the cramped kitchen, where your diapers now drip onto the stew pot with quiet, passive aggression. And if there's a shortage of nappies, which, let's face it, there always is, you go bare-bottomed for a while. A towel wrapped around your waist, a frown on your mother's face, and a stern warning to go outside if you must. You crawl across floors that haven't seen mop water in weeks. Floors that crunch slightly when you cross them. The grime of coal dust mingling with biscuit crumbs and soot flakes. You chew on your own fingers and anything else within reach, which includes, unfortunately, one of your own nappies that fell behind the stove and marinated there for several days. When it's time to move beyond nappies, potty training begins in earnest. But your potty is a battered tin chamber pot with a dented rim and a faint rust ring at the bottom. It lives under the bed, beside a jar of goose grease and a box of buttons with no known purpose. Your first attempts are met with enthusiastic praise, quickly followed by groans as your older sibling tips the pot too hard and spills the contents onto the only clean blanket in the house. There's no such thing as disposable wipes. A damp rag does the job, rinsed in a bowl of grey water and hung over the fireguard to dry. Everything is reused. Everything is saved. Your dirty nappies are never thrown away, only rinsed, wrung, and reassembled like a sad patchwork quilt of your digestive history. And if you happen to have a particularly bad day, the kind of day that seeps beyond the cloth and into your very soul, the offending material is soaked in a bucket of vinegar and prayers. Visitors don't coo at you. They glance warily at your bottom half, sniff the air, and offer your mother a second-hand safety pin as a peace offering. There's always the risk of an incident during tea time, and one memorable occasion ends with you seated directly on a pudding tin, while everyone pretends it's perfectly normal for dessert to be postponed by biology. You learn early on that there's no point in crying about it. Wet nappies are the least of your problems. Your mother is trying to stretch a can of Spam over 5 meals, and your sister has developed a mysterious rash that everyone's decided not to talk about. So you toddle on, wrapped in cloth that's slightly damp, slightly musty, and always fastened with the speed and precision of someone who's done this too many times to count. In the rare moments when things are clean, there's a ritual to it. Fresh nappies are folded on the arm of a chair, still warm from the iron, and dusted lightly with talcum powder when there's any left. You get to lie on a folded towel while your mother hums something low and old-fashioned, her voice tired but steady. The powder smells like comfort and distance. It doesn't last long. By the next hour, the powder is soaked through, the towel is stained, and you're, once again, the damp little bundle of wartime defiance that everyone is trying to keep alive. You also learn the art of being still during changes. Wriggle too much and you'll get pricked by a pin. Stay still and you might be rewarded with a crust of bread or, if you're lucky, a sliver of jam scraped from the bottom of a jar. You begin to associate stillness with sweets, which is possibly why you grow up to be oddly obedient when faced with bribes and baked goods. The bucket where used nappies go is metal, rust-flecked, and fitted with a lid that never quite shuts. It sits just outside the back door and attracts every fly within a 2-mile radius. Occasionally, a neighbor borrows it, dumps it in the canal, or accidentally knocks it over while trying to retrieve a rolling potato. There are rules about not placing it too close to the vegetable patch, but those rules are often ignored, particularly on wash day, when space is at a premium and tempers are short. At night, your nappies are lined up in a neat row by the fire, drying gently in the glow of burning coke. You sleep with a slight crinkle to your backside and a scent that never quite disappears. Even when your mother replaces the cloth with an old pair of knickers, repurposed with a cotton pad, the result is more absorbent theater prop than functioning undergarment. The other children tease you about your newsprint bum and chant headlines as you toddle past. You take it in stride. One day, you'll grow into their shoes, literally, because hand-me-downs are law, and wear undergarments that don't crackle with ink or sag like potato sacks. Until then, you remain the smallest, squishiest soldier in a battle fought daily against filth, leaks, and the steady march of wartime decay. Eventually, you're old enough to stand, then stumble, then toddle. And with that newfound mobility comes a world of mess that your ragged nappies can no longer contain. But you're not yet big enough to be trusted. So your mother continues to dress you in layers, always a little damp, always a little stiff, and hauls out the battered zinc tub once a week for what passes as your bath. It's not a charming, bubble-filled scene with yellow rubber ducks and soft music in the background. No, it's Monday, and Monday is wash day, which means the tub is filled used and reused by every member of the household in strict age order. And as the youngest, you are, of course, dead last. The tin bath lives behind the stove for most of the week. But on bath day, it is dragged out with a screech across the worn wooden floor and placed in the middle of the kitchen, directly in front of the open coal fire. The kettle has been boiling since early morning, and the hot water is poured in by the ladleful, hissing as it hits the base. Then comes the cold tap water, added with exaggerated caution to stretch the rationed warmth. Your mother tests the temperature with her elbow, always her elbow, and deems it good enough. Your oldest brother goes first, emerging red-faced and smug. Then your sister, then the baby your aunt left behind when she went to work in the fields. The water darkens steadily, clouds of grime swirling lazily beneath the surface, like ghostly memories of everyone's feet and elbows. By the time it's your turn, the water is tepid, grey, and faintly oily. Still, your mother coos. Don't you feel grand now? As she lifts you in with a grunt and tries to find a clean bit of flannel to dab behind your ears. The soap is a brown, rectangular block, slippery and suspiciously cracked. It smells strongly of coal tar and resentment. You stare at it with the wary respect of something that stings when rubbed too enthusiastically. There is no shampoo. Hair is washed with the same soap, rubbed briskly into your scalp until the suds sting your eyes and leave your hair dry and fluffy, like scorched straw. Your scalp itches for days, but you don't mention it. Complaining is a luxury reserved for those with clean fingernails. The flannel she uses has been patched so many times, it's more thread than cloth. She wipes your face with it anyway, working methodically. Cheeks, neck, underarms, behind your knees, all while muttering about lice and ringworm as though they're neighbors who drop in unannounced. Your toes are black. You don't know why. They just are. Maybe from walking barefoot on warm soot. Maybe from chasing the cat into the coal shed. Either way, she scrubs them until you wince, then kisses your forehead. Like that makes it better. The towel is stiff and barely absorbent. It smells faintly of onions. You're wrapped tightly, like a burrito of sadness, and stood near the fire to dry off, where you shiver quietly and stare at your siblings, who are already back to arguing about buttons and pretending to be spies. You're offered a crust of bread as a post-bath treat, and your mother slathers it with dripping, a greasy spread made from leftover meat fat, and tells you not to drop crumbs in your clean hair. Once dry, you're redressed in last week's dress or romper, still damp from the rinse it got in the wash basin, still smelling vaguely of the vinegar used to soften the water. The seams itch. There's a button missing near the hem, but it's clean, or clean enough, which is the highest compliment clothes can receive these days. There's no perfume, no powder, no sweet-smelling lotions. If anything, a dusting of flour might get rubbed under your arms if you're going to be out in public. It's not for hygiene, it's for illusion. You don't bathe again for 7 more days, and in that time, you accumulate a film of daily life. Porridge smudges, milk dribbles, garden soil, chalk, soot from the fireplace, and the occasional mark from a cousin's leaky nose. No one minds. No one notices. Everyone stinks the same. Your fingernails are black crescents, your ears cradle dust. And the back of your neck always has a grayish hue that won't quite wash out. You are, in every sense, perfectly average. Sometimes, on special occasions, like when relatives are expected, or a neighbor dies, and there might be a photographer, you get what's called a top and tail. It's a quick once-over with a rag and a splash of lavender water that hasn't smelled like lavender in decades. Your hair is combed with a broken-toothed brush, and your parting is drawn with a finger licked clean seconds before. If you complain, you're reminded sternly that there are children in Europe who haven't had a bath since the invasion. There are other types of baths, of course. Rain baths, when you strip down to your knickers and run into the garden during a downpour, shrieking with joy, while your mother laughs from the back door and tells you to scrub your armpits while you're at it. And there are emergency baths after an accident or a particularly bad tummy day, or the time you rolled in a puddle that turned out to be more goose than water. Then there's the dreaded communal bath, something that happens during evacuation or when visiting a cousin in the country. A long tin trough set in a barn or a back shed, filled once, then shared by 6 squealing children, each more reluctant than the last. There's always a floating bit of straw, a handful of soap bubbles clinging stubbornly to the surface, and one cousin who insists on peeing just a little to warm it up. You never really feel clean. Not truly. Not like the girls in the magazine photos with their shiny teeth and brushed hair. But cleanliness, for you, is about minimizing odor, visible stains, and lice. And that's a full-time job. You're inspected once a week by your aunt, who lifts your arms, checks behind your ears, and sniffs your head with a wrinkled nose and narrowed eyes. If you pass, you get a boiled sweet. If not, it's back into the tub. Or worse, the vinegar rinse. In time, you start to associate the smell of soap with Sunday evenings, clean sheets, and the crackling sound of the wireless. It becomes a sort of ritual. The bath, the scratchy towel, the too tight pajamas that smell faintly of mothballs, and the warm cup of watery cocoa before bed. You lie still under your coarse blanket, skin slightly itchy from the soap, and stare at the ceiling while your hair dries in frizzy clumps around your face. The house quiets around you. The fire dims. A coal pops in the grate. And somewhere, far away, the low rumble of a plane reminds you that cleanliness might be next to godliness. But survival is something far dirtier. You're just beginning to understand the concept of personal space when the lice arrive. They're not announced, of course. They don't knock. They simply show up one morning, crawling along your scalp like they own the place. And from that day on, your head is never entirely your own again. You sit on a low stool in front of the fire while your mother combs through your hair with the dreaded knit comb. A narrow, cruel-looking piece of metal with teeth as fine as whispers and twice as cutting. The vinegar solution is already soaking into your roots. It's cold, pungent, and it stings just enough to make your eyes water. The smell clings to you for hours afterward. A sharp tang that settles in your hair, your collar, even your socks somehow. The comb pulls and catches and scratches, scraping along your scalp in methodical rows. Your mother doesn't pause, even when you flinch. She has the rhythm of this ritual down to a science. Comb, flick, wipe. Comb, flick, wipe. Into a stained handkerchief go the tiny pale bodies of your unwelcome visitors, lined up like an army in defeat. You cry once, softly. She tells you it builds character. Your siblings await their turn, sitting in a sullen, itchy line, each of them scratching absently at their ears, necks, and foreheads. Lice are the great equalizer. No one escapes them, not during wartime. Even the posh girls in ribbons and polished shoes walk around with secret colonies in their curls. Delousing is not a punishment. It's just something that happens, like fog or rationing or the milkman forgetting your street. You don't talk about it much. You scratch quietly in class, pretend you're just adjusting your hair, and hope the teacher doesn't call attention to it. When inspection day comes, always unannounced, you line up like little soldiers, heads bowed, as the nurse parts your hair with a gloved hand and inspects the roots, with a face that betrays no sympathy. If you're clean, you get a nod. If you're not, you get sent home with a note that says something vague and awful, like needs attention. And attention you get. Hot vinegar again. Or sometimes paraffin, carefully dabbed on with a cloth, while everyone else keeps a safe distance. Your head tingles for hours. You're not allowed near candles for obvious reasons. Some families shave their daughters' heads completely. It's quicker, easier, less shameful, they say, than scratching all through supper. You narrowly avoid that fate, but your fringe is kept short, uneven, and always slightly singed at the ends from passing too close to the fire. Your comb is a shared tool, cleaned by boiling water when possible, wiped on a sleeve when not. There's also the occasional visit from a well-meaning relative with her own remedy. Once, your aunt arrives with a jar of thick tar-black paste made of coal dust and goose fat, which she smears onto your scalp with unholy enthusiasm. The result is less about hygiene and more about humiliation. You smell like roasted meat and train smoke for a week. The lice seem to enjoy the experience. They dig in deeper, thrive even. That's the thing about them. They're resilient. They are the only ones thriving more than the black marketeers. The pillowcase on your bed is washed more often than anything else you own. Your mother boils it in a pot of lye water on Sundays, wrings it out until her knuckles ache, and pins it to the line with grim satisfaction. Clean enough to eat off, she mutters, though no one ever tests that theory. She's developed a sixth sense for infestation. She can hear the scratching in the night. She knows when it's back. She always knows, and lice aren't your only worry. Fleas hop from the floorboards to your ankles. You wake with red bites like tiny polka dots climbing your legs. Your mother sprinkles powdered naphthalene around the bedpost and mutters curses from her grandmother's time. You learn to tuck your socks into your pajama cuffs and pull the blanket over your head, despite the stuffy heat. Then there are these scabies outbreaks. You don't remember the word for it, just that the itching never stops, and the red trails on your arms form strange, winding patterns, like tiny, angry rivers. The remedy is a yellow paste from the clinic that smells of sulfur and old cabbage, rubbed into every crease and fold of your skin, until you glisten with medicinal shame. The worst, though, the true enemy, is ringworm. Circular, flaky patches on your arms, sometimes your neck, once even your eyebrow. You're marked, branded, a walking contagion. You wear scarves in summer, pull your sleeves down in the heat, and pretend you're just cold. You learn early how to hide, and yet, hygiene becomes a game. A silent competition among children to see who can go the longest without being publicly outed. You brag about your last inspection. You whisper rumors about whose mother never washes behind their ears. One girl is said to have maggots in her blanket. Another keeps a hedgehog under her bed and blames it for the smell. On special occasions, there are delousing stations. Big communal events, usually organized at schools or shelters. You queue with your classmates, strip to your knickers, and walk past nurses in aprons who dust you with a puff of powder from a metal canister. It smells vaguely floral and strongly of embarrassment. Your cheeks burn as you're patted down like contraband. No one looks anyone else in the eye. You all pretend it's not happening. Afterward, your skin feels dry and chalky. Your hair is limp. But for a day or two, the itching stops. And that, in this world, is what victory feels like. Your mother keeps a jar of combs near the stove. Metal, bone, plastic if she's lucky. She boils them once a week and dries them on a cloth with a cross-stitched chicken on it. Each comb has a story. Who it belonged to, who it outlasted, which cousin lost a tooth during a squabble over it. You have your favorite, even though it pulls. You learn to tolerate pain. You learn that hygiene is not about pleasure. It's about control, order, survival. Some nights when the itch becomes unbearable, you sit awake under your blanket, legs drawn up, and hum softly to distract yourself. Your sister scratches her head beside you in the dark, rhythmically, like an old metronome. It becomes a lullaby of sorts. The sound of tiny feet marching across your scalp, the scrape of nails against skin, the soft creak of bed springs and distant planes. Eventually you fall asleep. It's not a clean sleep, but it's sleep all the same. You're starting to grow taller now, and your clothes no longer quite fit the way they used to. Not that they ever really fit to begin with. Most of what you wear has passed through several hands before reaching you. And your wardrobe consists entirely of hand-me-downs, charity box finds, and the occasional miracle gift from a neighbor who had a growth spurt child. But even so, hygiene is a puzzle you must solve with ration coupons and raw determination, especially when it comes to keeping your clothing from fermenting into something semi-sentient. Washing clothes is not something anyone wants to do. It's something they must do. And even then, as sparingly as possible. Soap is rationed, carefully scored into bars and stored in the back of a cupboard, behind the emergency tin of sardines and the last broken stub of a candle. You don't wash your clothes when they're dirty. You wash them when they're offensive. There's a scale for this, developed over years of necessity. Still wearable, tolerable if aired, turn inside out and try again, and finally, burn it and pray. You are most often in turn inside out territory. Your dresses, stitched from old curtains or rough cotton dyed with weak tea to cover the stains, are rarely washed more than once every 2 weeks, if that. Instead, they are shaken out briskly, hung in the wind, if the weather allows, or held briefly over the steam of a boiling kettle to freshen them up. a technique that does nothing and satisfies no one. You have exactly 2 pairs of knickers. One is on your body, the other is drying over the stove. They are mismatched, sagging, and patched with scraps from an old pillowcase. The elastic is long gone, replaced with a bit of string you tie yourself with careful, trembling fingers. If you tie it too tight, it cuts into your hips. Too loose, and the knickers sag down around your knees while you walk. You become very good at balance. Your socks are similarly tragic. They're woolen, scratchy, and host to small holes that grow slowly over time, like ancient tree rings. You learn to darn them with the same needle used to stitch up buttons, hems, and once, your brother's split earlobe after he tripped over a wash basin. The darning is lumpy and makes your shoes tight, but going barefoot is worse. Not because of germs, you've given up caring about that, but because of the splinters. Coats are worn until the seams give up. You remember the day your winter coat finally lost a sleeve. You simply pinned it back on and pretended it was a new style. Your shoes are stuffed with newspaper to mask the holes in the soles. If you're lucky, the paper is from the women's page, which at least smells faintly of talcum and optimism. If not, you walk around with war casualty lists flaking under your toes. Washing clothes is an ordeal. There's no washing machine, no running hot water, just a galvanized steel wash tub and a washboard, both of which live in the corner, like depressed relatives no one speaks to. On laundry day, your mother fills the tub with water from the kettle. Each load a separate boil, each boil a separate backache. The soap is shaved into curls and stirred with a stick. Your clothes are plunged in, soaked, then scrubbed until the fabric wears thin from sheer friction. You help wring the water out by twisting the garments with your sister, both of you grunting and slipping as the water drips down your arms. Then the clothes are carried, heavy and steaming, to the line strung across the garden, or, if it's raining again, across the kitchen. They drip onto the floor. The floor was already wet. No one notices. Sometimes your clothing is so stiff with dried sweat and soot that it holds its shape when removed. You once placed your school dress on a chair and mistook it for your cousin. Everyone laughed. You did too. But you still wore the dress the next day. The trick, everyone says, is to not let your clothes get that dirty. You adopt a series of tricks to extend the illusion of freshness. You press your dress under the mattress at night to flatten out the creases. You sponge it with vinegar and lemon when there's mold growing along the hem. You shake your socks out at lunchtime and leave them on the windowsill while you eat your cold potato. And smells? Smells are not something you discuss. Not allowed. Everyone smells like something. Coal smoke, boiled cabbage, paraffin, unwashed wool. You do what you can to minimize it. A sprig of lavender tucked into your collar. A sachet of mint leaves in your pocket. A dab of vinegar behind your ears that makes your eyes water. And your friends step back politely. The schoolroom is a quilt of overlapping stenches. Damp coats, chalk dust, hair oil, sweat-soaked wool, and something undefinable, but constant. You pretend not to notice. You raise your hand to answer questions. You take notes. You fidget on your splintery bench, pulling your knickers back into place and ignoring the growing crust of soot around your knees. When your clothes are finally washed, you wear them proudly, even if they're still a bit damp under the arms. You parade around the house, arms out like a scarecrow, breathing in the sharp, nose-burning scent of lye and coal smoke. You feel clean for approximately 4 hours. Then your brother sneezes on your collar, and the cycle begins again. Even your Sunday best, if you have such a thing, is only marginally better. A dress with fewer stains, a coat with both buttons, and socks that match. Your mother keeps it folded in a box with mothballs and old love letters. When you wear it, you're reminded not to sit on anything, lean against anything, or touch anything. You spend the day stiff as a fence post, smiling like it doesn't itch. Eventually, you grow used to it. The feel of rough fabric, the scratch of seams, the weight of wool that's never truly dry. You come to expect that your clothes won't just be garments. They'll be part of your body, shaping how you move, where you sit, and how much you dare to lift your arms. There is no illusion of freshness, just the quiet, dogged management of decay. You're around 10 now when your body begins to shift in those subtle, silent ways that signal the beginning of womanhood. Not that anyone warns you. Not that there are pamphlets or private talks or careful explanations over cups of warm cocoa. No. One morning, you wake up and notice something has changed. And by evening, you're hiding a blood-stained petticoat behind a stack of coal buckets and hoping no one finds out. Your first period arrives like an enemy in the night. Sudden, confusing, and utterly uninvited. The sensation is unfamiliar, heavy, sticky, and strangely warm. At first, you think you've cut yourself. Then you think you're dying. Then you sit very still and wait to stop existing. But your mother sees the spots on your underclothes, mutters something about starting, and disappears into the back room to fetch the family emergency supplies. A bundle of flannel cloths, fraying at the edges and stiff with old soap. There are no pads, no tampons, no pamphlets with smiling teenagers riding bicycles in white shorts. You get rags, actual rags, torn from old shirts, stitched into rectangular shapes, and stacked in a drawer beside the socks and candles. Your mother teaches you how to fold them just right, how to position them inside a pair of reinforced knickers with loops sewn into the waistband, and how to fasten them in place using safety pins older than you are. You learn quickly. Pin too high, and it cuts into your hip. Pin too low, and the whole thing shifts when you walk. Some girls try to fashion belts from elastic scraps or string. You go with the tried and true, pray and stay still method. Washing the clothes is your responsibility. They go into a separate bucket, hidden in the coal shed or behind the washtub, and are boiled when no one else is around. You stir them with a stick, pinch your nose, and pretend it's just more laundry. Once rinsed, they're hung discreetly on a line behind the curtain in your bedroom or placed flat on the stove to dry before the others wake up. There is no shame, just silence. You never speak of it, not even with your sister, who offers a sympathetic grimace the first time you drip on the stairs. The discomfort is constant. The cloth shifts when you walk. It rubs your thighs. It bunches when you sit. You feel it always, like a small, moist animal lodged in your underclothes. There's an art to walking without jostling it. A secret rhythm you learn with practice. Steady, straight-backed steps, small strides, always aware. Some girls bleed through and say nothing, hoping no one notices. One girl tries using cotton wool. There's a disaster during recess. Another uses newspaper, folded tightly and wrapped in a handkerchief. You don't ask how that went. There are no painkillers either. You get a hot water bottle if you're lucky. Most of the time, you get a brisk pat on the shoulder and are told to keep moving. It builds stamina, apparently. So, you do your chores while doubling over every few minutes. You climb stairs with gritted teeth. You learn to breathe through the cramps and smile through the nausea. If you faint, you do it politely, near a soft patch of carpet or hay. And then there's the smell. Not from you, though you're constantly paranoid about that, but from the cloths, especially after a full day. You keep a packet of crushed rosemary in your pocket and press it to your nose when the world feels especially ripe. The girls at school swap herbs in secret. Bay leaf, mint, lavender, anything to mask the metallic truth of growing up in a world without privacy or perfume. Occasionally, you're caught unprepared. It comes early. You're in the classroom. A dark patch blooms on your seat. The boy next to you snickers. You sit frozen for the rest of the lesson, then pretend to be ill and walk home with your coat tied around your waist. Tears streaking your cheeks. Your mother isn't angry, just tired. She hands you another rag, tells you to keep track next time, and mutters something about the moon. You mark a calendar with small, frightened crosses, though the rhythm of your cycle is as unpredictable as the ration deliveries. There are no disposal bins, no flushable products, no scented bags. When a cloth is too stained to save, it's buried in the garden under the guise of fertilizing the roses. One girl's dog dug hers up. That's a story you'll never forget. Still, you adapt. You find the least itchy cloth. You learn to rinse them quickly, fold them tighter, double them up when you need to, and sit carefully on wooden chairs. You develop a sixth sense for accidents. You carry spares in your sleeve, wrapped in wax paper and tied with string. You always know where the nearest bucket is. You avoid spinning games and long church services. Over time, it becomes a routine. You become less afraid. You even feel a strange sense of pride. You're a functioning machine. A girl who bleeds and still carries coal, who mops floors and recites her multiplication tables, while pinned together with flannel and hope. Some girls whisper about alternatives. One claims her aunt uses sea sponge, boiled and reused. Another swears her cousin in America gets something called a sanitary belt, with clips and buckles like a suitcase. You dream of it, like others dream of chocolate or warm shoes. Sometimes you lie awake and imagine a life where periods arrive with fanfare and tea and someone handing you soft cotton with a smile. But that world isn't yours. Yours is one of vinegar buckets, safety pins, and quiet endurance. The first time your cloth slips while you're playing, you run behind the shed and stand there until the bleeding stops. You go home with a frown and your socks soaked halfway up your calves. No one says a word. Later, your sister gives you a folded piece of flannel that smells faintly of rose soap. She doesn't explain. She doesn't need to. You keep that piece longer than you should. It's soft, well-washed, and almost kind. It reminds you that even in a world where hygiene is a war and privacy a myth, there are still small comforts stitched between the rags. The house you live in doesn't have a bathroom. Not in the way you'd think of one. There's no porcelain sink, no tiled floor, no mirror reflecting your sleepy face in the morning light. What you have instead is a wooden door at the back of the garden, slightly warped from rain, with a latch that doesn't quite catch, and a hole in the bottom corner where a mouse once made its way in and stayed for 3 unforgettable days. That's your toilet. A shed with a seat and a smell and absolutely no lighting after sundown. It's an outhouse, or the privy, as everyone calls it. A narrow wooden bench with a round hole cut into the middle, set over a deep pit that gets dusted now and then, with ashes from the stove. There is no flush. There is no plumbing. There is only you, your sense of balance, and a half-cracked window that lets in cold air and the judgment of passing birds. Using the toilet is not a spontaneous decision. It's a mission. You plan it carefully. You scan the sky for rain clouds. You check the time to make sure it's not too dark. You tell your siblings where you're going in case you don't come back. You hold your breath and make the trek down the uneven path, past the laundry line and the washing tub, until you reach the little wooden box, squatting at the end of the garden, like a secret no one wants to own. You open the door slowly, hoping not to startle whatever insect or rodent may have taken up residence since the last visit. Inside, the smell is immediate and not entirely describable. A mix of damp wood, human waste, mold, and desperation. You step inside, trying not to let the door swing shut too loudly. If it latches from the outside, you'll have to scream until someone rescues you. The seat is splintery, always, and cold. In the winter, it's so cold, it leaves your thighs numb. You learn to hover if you can manage it. If not, you lower yourself down gingerly and pray you don't shift too far to one side. The last time you did, a loose board cracked under you, and you yelped loud enough to wake the neighbor's dog. There's no toilet paper. That's a luxury reserved for people in American movies. Instead, there's a small box beside the seat, filled with torn newspaper, outdated ration forms, and the occasional page from a water-damaged magazine. If you're lucky, the print doesn't rub off. If you're unlucky, you emerge from the shed with headlines stuck to your backside. Sometimes, in a rare show of indulgence, your mother sets out squares of cloth, old flannel scraps, softer than paper, but 10 times worse to wash. Those go straight into a bucket behind the shed, soaking in cold water until laundry day. You try not to look at that bucket. It has seen things. During air raids, using the privy becomes a negotiation with fate. You're not supposed to leave the house once the sirens begin, but nature doesn't care about German bombers. You try to hold it. You really do. But sometimes you're crouching on that seat, trembling from both cold and fear, while the sky rumbles and the shed door creaks ominously in the wind. Once you swore you heard a plane overhead and didn't go for 2 full days afterward. It was unpleasant. At night, if you're brave or foolish, you take a candle or an oil lantern. But the flame flickers, and shadows move strangely inside the cramped wooden walls. You've imagined ghosts in there more than once. Once, a particularly large moth landed on your knee, and you screamed so loud your brother dropped his cocoa. Most nights you use the chamber pot instead. It's a wide metal bowl with a handle and a lid that doesn't stay on. It lives under the bed, and everyone takes turns using it in the dark. There's a system of knocking and whispering to check if it's ready, and an unspoken rule that whoever fills it must be the one to empty it in the morning. Sometimes it's forgotten. Sometimes it's kicked. Sometimes someone mistakes it for the kettle. That happened only once. But the trauma lingers. Emptying the pot is an early morning chore. You carry it out with both hands, careful not to spill, and dump it behind the compost pile, wincing as the wind changes. Then you rinse it with a splash of ash water and dry it with a rag that used to be someone's sock. It's clean enough. Nothing is really clean. You make peace with that. In summer, the heat turns the privy into a sauna of scent. The flies are unbearable. You wave them away with one hand while trying to keep your balance with the other. Someone once tried to hang flypaper in there, but it melted and fell onto the seat. Now no one talks about it. In winter, the cold seeps through the cracks and numbs your extremities. Your breath fogs the air. The wooden walls groan in protest at the wind. You bring a hot brick to sit on, wrapped in cloth. It helps. Slightly. Not enough. And through it all, there's the ever-present fear of being seen. The garden has gaps in the hedges. The neighbors' boys climb trees. You've perfected the art of dashing to and from the privy, with your coat flapping around your knees like a wartime superheroine. Your mother once installed a makeshift curtain inside the door, a strip of old wool blanket that flaps in the wind and smells like boiled cabbage. You're grateful for it anyway. Despite the horrors, the privy becomes a strange sort of haven. It's the only place where you can sit alone for 5 minutes, where no one bothers you unless it's urgent. You've cried in there. You've read half a novel by candlelight. You've carved your name into the wood with a broken hairpin and blamed it on your cousin. One day you hear rumors of indoor plumbing. A family on the next street got a real toilet, white ceramic with a flush and everything. You can't imagine such luxury. It sounds like science fiction. You dream of it that night, of pressing a handle and hearing the glorious whoosh of everything disappearing in clean, fresh water. You wake up smiling, but for now, there's the shed, the seat, the bucket, and you. You know which floorboards to step on to avoid the creak. You know how many sheets of newspaper are enough. You know how to hold your breath for exactly 43 seconds. You also know, without a doubt, that you'll survive anything this world throws at you. You use the toilet in a garden shed, and you do it with dignity. Your teeth start to wobble, one by one, like little white soldiers preparing for desertion. And as they fall out, they're tucked beneath your pillow, with the faintest hope that maybe, just maybe, the tooth fairy will still find her way through rationed streets and blackout curtains. But by the time you're old enough to count your own molars, dental hygiene is already something of a guessing game. There is no colorful plastic toothbrush, no sugar-free bubblegum toothpaste, no morning and night reminder from a cheerful jingle on the radio. What you have is a shared brush, if you're lucky, and a jar of something gritty, bitter, and very, very salty. Toothpaste is a luxury. Some families can afford a little tin of paste that smells vaguely of chalk and mint, with a lid that never screws on properly. Others make do with alternatives. Baking soda, if you're fortunate. Table salt, if you're not. You take a pinch, rub it on your finger, and scrub across your teeth with a grimace. The sensation is like dragging sandpaper across damp wood. It burns a little. It makes your gums ache. It doesn't foam. It doesn't sparkle. It just gleams in the most ruthless, joyless way possible. The toothbrush itself, when available, is shared among siblings. It's a wooden-handled relic with coarse bristles that fan out in all directions, like a dandelion in distress. It lives in a cup by the sink, if your house even has a sink, and is rinsed under the tap, then tapped firmly against the rim, like that's enough to banish whatever horrors it's already seen. You take your turn with it each morning, trying not to gag at the taste of old salt and someone else's mouth. If it goes missing, your mother accuses the cat. If it splinters, she wraps the handle in twine and insists it's better than ever. You don't brush twice a day. That's a waste of resources. You brush when someone remembers. You brush before church. You brush before school photos. Sometimes you brush because your breath smells like last night's onions and your sister won't sit next to you. There's no floss, no mouthwash, just salt and hope and a cracked mirror held up to the window for better light. Your gums bleed often. No one seems surprised. That's how you know it's working, your aunt says with a wink, handing you a wedge of apple that makes your mouth sting. You wince through it. Your back molars develop tiny pits that grow darker each month. A friend at school shows you her tooth in a matchbox, proudly knocked out during a fall. You envy her. At least, hers is gone. When pain comes, and it always does, it's dealt with quietly. You press a cold spoon to your cheek. You chew on cloves, which numb the gum just enough to take the edge off. Your mother rubs a bit of whiskey along your gum line, even though it's strictly reserved for medicinal purposes and hidden behind the pickled onions. You sleep with your jaw clenched tight and dream of a world with dentists. The local dentist is a terrifying man who smells of smoke and disinfectant. His chair is cracked leather. His drill is foot-powered. If you're sent there, it's because things have gone past the point of rescue. He doesn't numb anything. He doesn't smile. He tells you to open wide, and then he begins. The pain is sharp and deep and full of echoes. You walk home afterward in silence, one side of your mouth sagging slightly, with a blood-soaked bit of cotton clutched in your fist like a medal. Sometimes, to avoid this fate, your mother pulls the tooth herself. She ties a bit of string to the handle of a door, then to the offending tooth. One swift slam, and it's done, if all goes well. If it doesn't, you spend the next week eating nothing but mashed carrots and breathing through clenched teeth. You try to protect what teeth you have left. You chew slowly. You avoid the stale toffees your uncle brings from the factory. You brush when you can and rinse with boiled water, cooled in a jam jar. The water always tastes faintly of cabbage. Everything tastes faintly of cabbage. Even sweets, when you get them, aren't worth the cost. One boiled sweet lasts an hour, rolled around your mouth like a fragile pearl. You savor it, but afterward, your teeth ache with guilt and sugar rot. You go straight to the basin and rub your gums with salt until they scream. Despite it all, your smile is strong. Crooked, yes, a bit chipped around the edges, but real. When you laugh, your mouth opens wide, and no one cares that your front tooth leans ever so slightly to the left. It adds character, they say. And anyway, there's no such thing as braces. Only clever girls who learn to smile with their mouths closed in photographs. There are homemade remedies, of course. Some families swear by charcoal. You tried it once, ground up from firewood, dabbed onto your finger, and scrubbed across your teeth. It worked in a way. But your gums turned black for 2 days, and your aunt thought you had gangrene. Others use crushed chalk, or burnt bread crusts, or mashed mint leaves stolen from garden windowsills. You carry a mint leaf in your pocket for special occasions, not to chew, but to rub against your tongue and pretend. It's a ritual, a preparation, your way of saying, I tried, I cared. Even in a world where decay is the norm and hygiene is a dream, you dream with your eyes open. To this day, your tongue finds the spaces in your smile like old friends. Each missing tooth has a story. The time you fell off the step outside the church. The summer you got an abscess, and no one believed you until your cheeks swelled like a grapefruit. The molar that simply gave up one night and cracked in half while you chewed boiled barley. You don't count them anymore. You just know what's gone and what's still holding on. You admire people with gold fillings, not for the shine, but for the fact that someone thought they were worth repairing. Your toothbrush eventually vanishes one winter. No one knows where it went. It's not replaced. Instead, you rub your teeth with your finger, with salt, with a corner of flannel dipped in warm water. You carry on. You adjust. And when you smile in the mirror, cracked though it is, you see a survivor. Not perfect, not polished, but your hair is getting longer now, or at least longer than what wartime patience and rationed scissors typically allow. It's thick, unruly, and somehow always slightly damp, either from sweat, steam, or the general sogginess of post-Blitz Britain. You've long given up the fantasy of bouncing curls or glossy waves like the ladies on the posters. Your reality is closer to frizz, knots, and the occasional mysterious stick or crumb embedded in your strands. But hair, like everything else, must be managed. Not for vanity, heavens no, but for practicality. It gets in the way, it collects lice, and it makes you look wild, which your mother says is one step away from being godless. You don't have shampoo. No one does. Instead, your weekly wash involves a cracked bowl of lukewarm rainwater, or whatever's left in the kettle after tea. The soap you use on your body doubles as hair soap, an aggressive brown bar that stings your eyes and smells like coal tar and regret. It leaves your hair squeaky, but not in the clean way. More like a wet wool sock being wrung through a cheese grater. Once a month, if your mother is feeling indulgent, she'll crack an egg into a chipped cup and whisk it with a fork. This egg yolk mixture, rich, sticky, and unsettling, is massaged into your scalp with the enthusiasm of a kitchen chore. It smells faintly of breakfast and shame. Afterward, she pours tepid water over your head, and you spend the next hour picking bits of cooked white from your roots. Your hair doesn't shine. It stiffens. You smell vaguely omelette adjacent for 3 days. For curl setting, there's no mousse, no curling irons, no fancy sprays. You set your hair with rags, long strips of flannel torn from worn-out pajamas. Each night, your mother twists small sections of your hair into these cloths and ties them in tight knots. You sleep on them like rocks. In the morning, you remove them carefully and pat your curls into place with a dab of beer. Yes, beer. The flat, warm dregs from the bottom of your uncle's cup. It acts as a setting agent, holding your curls stiff as cardboard and leaving your hair smelling like pub carpets. If beer isn't available, sugar water will do. Boil down until it's just sticky enough to form a crust at the crown of your head. A breeze hits and your hair crackles. Touch it, and you might lose a finger. You walk carefully, head held high like a porcelain doll, afraid to smile too wide lest your curls shift out of place and bring the whole facade down like a crumbling souffle. Your brush is shared among the household. It has exactly 4 surviving bristles and a handle that's been wrapped in string to keep it from splintering. If you lose it, there is no forgiveness. You comb your hair with a fork once, just once. Your mother finds out. You do not repeat that mistake. Lice remain a threat. Every week your hair is inspected under the harsh light of a paraffin lamp. Your scalp is parted with a tail comb while your mother peers down with narrowed eyes. If she finds anything crawling, the vinegar comes back out. Or worse, paraffin. Rubbing paraffin into your hair is as horrifying as it sounds. Your head becomes a fire hazard. You're not allowed near the stove for 3 days. The smell never leaves you. Even the cat avoids you. There's also a powder, grey and chalky, kept in a tin marked for pests. It's dusted across your scalp like flour on a workbench. It makes your head itch and your eyes stink. But it kills everything that dares to live near your follicles. You wear a scarf afterward to keep it all in, looking like a tiny bandit with a head full of toxins and hope. Haircuts are rare. When they happen, they're swift and utilitarian. You sit on a stool, a towel around your shoulders, while someone with limited experience and unlimited confidence attacks your locks with kitchen shears. The result is always lopsided. Always. Your fringe is either halfway up your forehead or completely missing. You pretend it's a new trend. Your brother calls you potato head. You kick him. Despite everything, hair becomes a small site of rebellion. You style it as best you can. You tie it up with string, twist it into braids, pin it into buns with bent bobby pins, or wrap it in a scarf that once belonged to your grandmother. Each style has a purpose. A bun means you're cleaning. Braids mean you're going out. A scarf means don't ask. When Sunday comes, you do your best. You rinse your hair in the same bowl used to soak your feet. You comb it until your arm aches. You add a sprig of lavender if you can find one, or more often, a single drop of rose water from a bottle so old it's turned brown. You part your hair in the center, smooth it back, and pretend just for a moment that it looks like the girls in the magazines. You smile at yourself in the broken mirror, tilt your head, and decide it's not so bad. From a distance, in the right light, school is another matter. Girls compare curls and flick each other's fringes. One girl uses margarine to tame flyaways. Another boasts that her mother mixes goose grease with lemon peel. You try it once. You smell like burnt pudding and nearly start a fire when you lean too close to a candle at choir practice. When headscarves become fashionable, thank you, wartime propaganda posters, you jump on the trend. You tie one around your head with pride, tucking in your frizz and pretending it's all part of a Rosie the Riveter look. It helps. A little. At least the scarf is clean. Usually. But no matter how you wear your hair, you always feel the weight of it. Literal weight, sometimes damp, heavy, and dragging your head backward. Figurative weight, too. The effort of keeping it neat, the shame when it's greasy, the constant scratching and checking and hoping. Hair is a job, a daily maintenance ritual with no rewards and few tools. Still, there are good days. Days when the curls set just right, when the vinegar smell fades by noon, when no one points out your split ends. On those days, you hold your chin a little higher. You skip instead of walk. You let the sun catch your frizz and pretend it's a halo. And in the quiet moments, you run your fingers through your hair, rough, tangled, stubborn, and remind yourself, it's yours. It's a mess. It's a tangle of survival, just like you. Summer arrives with no real warning, only the steady swelling of heat and the return of flies to every room, every cupboard, every privy. And with summer comes sweat. Endless, unavoidable, uncomfortable sweat. You sweat through your wool dress. You sweat through your cotton chemise. You sweat through your socks. And even, somehow, your fingernails. The wartime uniforms don't help. Made of heavy, scratchy material that seems specifically designed to absorb moisture and then refuse to dry, holding the smell of a long day's labor like a secret too scandalous to release. And there's no deodorant. Not for you, not for your mother, not for your teachers or your neighbor, or the woman who sells turnips on the corner with a mysterious stain on her collar. No one smells particularly good, and no one pretends otherwise. You simply accept that everyone exists in various stages of fermentation. The closest thing to deodorant you have is a dusting of talcum powder under your arms, when it's available, or a hurried swipe with a vinegar-soaked rag in the early morning, when the sun is already beginning to bake the air. You've tried everything. Crushed mint leaves under your arms, dabbing lemon juice on your wrists. Once, your aunt recommended baking soda mixed with rose water, which sounded promising until it caused a rash that lasted 2 full weeks. You walked around with your arms held stiff at your sides, red and itchy, with tiny white flakes dropping from your sleeves like snow in July. Your wardrobe makes it worse. The same wool coat you wear in winter still sees action during summer nights, and your undergarments, sturdy cotton, reinforced with extra seams and buttons, trap the heat like an oven mitt. You wear the same clothes 3, 4, 5 days in a row. You hang them out at night and bring them back in smelling slightly less offensive than before, like a wilted bouquet that's been rinsed and put back in the vase with yesterday's water. By midday, your back is slick, your hairline damp, the backs of your knees stick together. You try to fan yourself with a folded ration booklet. It doesn't help. The air stands still. The windows are open, But the breeze is just a rumor. There are no showers. The bath is for once a week, and you're not about to waste precious hot water on midweek cleanliness just because you've started to smell like curdled soup. Instead, you develop a routine of wiping down with a wet cloth, under the arms, behind the knees, between the toes. It's called a bird bath, though no bird you've ever met would tolerate this much indignity. You begin to notice the scent of others too. Your teacher's cardigan smells of boiled onions. Your best friend carries the unmistakable scent of mothballs and iron tablets. Your grandfather smells like liniment, sweat, and a lifetime of pipe smoke. No one mentions it. No one needs to. Scent is part of identity now. When you attend school, the classroom is a hotbox. 30 children packed together in wool, their limbs sticking to wooden benches, the air thick with pencil shavings, chalk dust, and unwashed feet. You try not to breathe too deeply. When someone faints, which happens at least once a fortnight, it's usually due to heat and smell combined. They're carried out and revived with a wet rag and a boiled sweet. There are tricks, of course. You learn to stuff lavender into your collar, to powder your feet with flour, to sprinkle rose water on your scarf, and wave it gently in front of your nose when the stench becomes too much. But these are temporary illusions. The moment you move, you sweat again. You also discover that wool does not dry easily. If it rains while you're sweating, which it often does in England, you end up with a damp wool dress clinging to your body like a cold, grumpy relative who won't take the hint to let go. It sags, it sours, and no matter how you try, you can't scrub the musty scent out of the underarms. Your armpits become your most carefully guarded secret. You check them constantly, dabbing, fanning, trying not to raise your arms too high in public. During group photos, you keep your elbows pinned to your sides and smile a little too tightly. At dances, it's even worse. The hall is full of bodies packed too close together. Music loud, air thick, and no ventilation to speak of. You press a handkerchief under each armpit and pray it absorbs enough to spare your dress. The moment the music starts, you feel the trickle, the slow, warm descent of sweat down your spine, under your bra, pooling in places you didn't know could sweat. You keep dancing, you don't stop, because if you do, the illusion breaks. Your underclothes bear the brunt of it. By the end of the week, your bra straps are stiff with salt. Your bloomers, long cotton things that reach your knees, are discolored and threadbare. Washing them involves soaking, scrubbing, boiling, and the sort of focus usually reserved for surgery. You hang them by the stove, turn them twice, and hope no one sees the stains. There are rumors of a powder from America, a miracle deodorant, smooth and sweet-smelling, that comes in a jar the size of a baby's fist. A girl from school claims her cousin sent one in a parcel, and she wears it on special occasions. You crowd around her during break, sniffing the air. She does smell different, like talc and oranges. It's enough to make you cry, but mostly, you make do. You get used to your own scent, the way your socks harden after 3 days, the faint whiff of vinegar that clings to your blouses, the way sweat stains bloom like small angry flowers under your arms. You adapt. You wear darker colors to hide the marks. You keep your arms close. You stand downwind. Eventually, the sweating slows. Or maybe you just stop caring. You realize everyone else is too busy surviving to judge your smell. Your mother smells, your teacher smells, the nurse smells. The man who drives the coal cart smells like 20 years of armpits and boiled eggs. And yet, life continues. And one day, when you smell fresh bread in the air, or the faint trace of rain on dry stone, you smile. Not because it's better, but because it's different. And for a moment, the stink of the world recedes. You go on, sweaty, sour, strong, and so human. You don't leave the house without your gas mask. It's not optional, it's the law. But more than that, it's a ritual now, like lacing your shoes or buttoning your coat. You grab it from its hook by the door, check the flimsy cardboard box for spiders, and sling it over your shoulder with all the ceremony of a child dragging their school bag to detention. It bumps against your hip as you walk, a constant reminder that even in the ordinary rhythm of daily life, war breathes down your neck. The mask itself is a strange contraption, rubber, glass, and something that looks like the snout of a metal pig. It smells like old tires and vinegar, with a hint of chalky despair that never quite fades. You're told it's to protect you from gas attacks, though no one has ever seen one. You try not to think too hard about what it's supposed to stop, because imagining it is worse than anything else. You've practiced with it, of course. Everyone has. The drill is always the same. When the siren wails, you open the box, yank out the mask, and shove your face into the damp, unwelcoming rubber. You breathe hard. It fogs up. It clings to your skin. The straps dig into your hair, and the exhale valve makes a tiny wheeze, like a defeated accordion. Your voice becomes muffled, your breath shallow, your entire face encased in something that feels both protective and profoundly suffocating. The first time you wear it for real, during a surprise drill, you nearly faint. You can't get enough air. You start to panic. Your mother crouches beside you, eyes wide inside her own mask, and reaches for your hand. You cling to her like a drowning swimmer, gasping behind the mask, trying to pretend you're fine. You're not fine, but you're alive. That's what counts. School is filled with gas mask drills. You line up in rows, masks on, shuffling down corridors like a parade of bug-eyed insects. Some children giggle, others cry. You focus on breathing, always breathing, in, out, in, out. The mask amplifies every sound inside your own head. Your heartbeat, your breath, your tiny whimpers of discomfort. You sound like a trapped animal. There are games, too. Children decorate their gas mask boxes. You draw flowers on yours, even though they smudge in the rain. One boy paints his like a pirate chest and gets in trouble for making war fun. Another girl glues a doll's bow to the top of her mask. It falls off during the next drill and lands in a puddle. She cries for 2 hours. Eventually, you forget what life was like without it. You reach for it reflexively. You pack it with your lunch, your school books, your raincoat. It's with you on the tram, in the shops, even in the queue for milk. You see everyone carrying one, slung over shoulders, tucked under arms, held tight like a child's toy. It's not strange anymore. It's just part of you. But the discomfort never goes away. The rubber chafes your cheeks. The straps pull your hair. In the summer, the mask turns into a steam chamber. You sweat behind the lenses until your vision blurs and your skin prickles. You lift it off for a second, just to breathe, and your teacher yells. You shove it back on. The fog rolls in again. Sometimes you daydream about what it would be like to wear something soft and light instead. A scarf, maybe, or nothing at all, just your face, free and open to the breeze. But that's dangerous thinking. The posters say so. Hitler will send no warning, they scream from every wall. Always carry your mask. So you do. One evening, the sirens wail for real. Not a drill, not a test. You rush to the shelter, mask already on, breath heaving. The air is thick with fear and the sharp tang of damp concrete. Inside the shelter, the masks become unbearable. People pant. Some pull them off when they think no one's watching. You keep yours on. You're not brave, just scared in a different way. Afterward, you emerge into a world that looks the same but smells like smoke. Your legs are jelly. Your palms are wrinkled from sweat. You clutch the box to your chest like a sacred relic. Children start to resist. Some pretend to forget their masks. Others accidentally drop them in puddles. One boy swaps his for a chocolate bar. You don't understand how he could do such a thing. You'd never give yours up, even though you hate it. Your mother tries to reassure you. It's just like wearing a scarf, she says, though she's clearly lying. No scarf ever made your ears ache for 3 days. No scarf ever filled your mouth with the taste of rubber and panic. At night, you hang it on the bedpost just in case. You've had dreams, bad ones, where the gas comes while you sleep. You wake up choking, clawing at your own face. You lie still for a long time afterward, listening for the sirens, the distant rumble of planes, the sound of your own breath against the stillness. And yet, over time, something strange happens. The mask becomes familiar. Not comfortable, but known. You adjust the straps without thinking. You wipe the lenses with the hem of your dress. You pack it beside your sandwich like it's just another part of the day. Eventually, they say the gas threat is unlikely. People stop wearing them as often. The rules relax. You still carry it, just in case. But now it feels more like a habit than a shield. One day, you find a new use for it. You stuff it with lavender and leave it in the airing cupboard. Your mother laughs, really laughs, and tells you maybe it's good for something after all. You agree. And for once, the air around you smells like something you can almost call safe. Nights are not restful. Nights are negotiations. You lie down not on a mattress of spring and fluff, but on a lumpy pile of straw sewn into a canvas sack. And that sack rests on wooden slats, creaking under the weight of you and your siblings. The straw shifts under your hips. The canvas itches your arms, and somewhere beneath it all, you can hear the soft scuttle of something alive. Maybe a beetle, maybe worse. Your bed is not yours alone. You share it with your sister, sometimes with a cousin passing through, and always with a collection of uninvited guests. The bedbugs. You try not to think about them when you first lie down. You try to focus on the rhythm of your own breathing, the distant thud of footsteps upstairs, the creak of floorboards settling into another long night. But soon enough, the itching begins. First your wrist, then the back of your calf, then your neck. It starts as a whisper of discomfort, then becomes a persistent tingle, then a full-body frustration that makes you want to tear the sheets off and throw them into the street. But you can't, because this is how everyone sleeps. Bedbugs are a fact of life, just like gas masks and ration queues. You learn to check for blood spots on the sheets, to lift the seams of your mattress and squint at the corners. Sometimes you spot one, a tiny rust-colored speck with legs, and squash it with your thumb. It smells sharp, like old coins. You wipe your hand on the wall and pretend you didn't see it. Your mother tries to fight them. She sprinkles naphthalene powder across the mattress seams. She stuffs lavender and dried rosemary into little sachets and tucks them between the sheets. She scrubs the bed frame with boiling water and carbolic soap. It doesn't work. The bugs always come back. You imagine them laughing in the dark. The bites aren't dangerous exactly, just irritating. They swell and redden, and some mornings you wake with little rows of dots trailing up your back like Morse code. You scratch until you bleed. Your socks stick to the sores. Your sister says you look like a wartime leopard. You kick her. Some nights, in desperation, you sleep on the floor instead. You drag your blanket onto the cold wooden boards, lie stiff as a plank, and hope the bugs don't follow. They do. They always do. One night, you try sleeping in the cupboard under the stairs. That night, you discover spiders. The mattress itself is a relic, straw-filled, patched with old dishcloths, sagging in the middle. It smells of mildew, dust, and people. When the straw gets too flat, your mother refills it with fresh straw from the market, lugging the bundle home on her back and spilling bits across the floor like some medieval breadcrumb trail. The new straw pokes through the fabric and scratches your legs. You pick the splinters out in the morning. Blankets are few, and they're heavy. You sleep under a woolen army surplus thing that smells of lanolin and old sweat. It weighs more than you do. Turning over is a full-body event. Sometimes the blanket has holes, and your mother patches them with scraps from coats or skirts. You wake with square impressions on your skin from the stitches. Pillows, if you have one, are flat and lumpy, stuffed with whatever filler was available, sometimes wool, sometimes horsehair, sometimes just rags. You rest your head and feel every knot, every seam, every stray button that somehow ended up inside. You don't complain, you just adjust. There's no such thing as pajamas. Not really. You sleep in whatever shirt is least stiff. Sometimes that's your school blouse, turned inside out to preserve its decency. Sometimes it's your brother's old vest. Sometimes it's nothing but a wool shawl tied under your arms. If it's winter, you wear socks to bed. If it's summer, you lie awake, sweating until sleep finally claims you. Nighttime is not quiet. The blackout curtains block the light, but not the noise. Planes pass overhead. Occasionally, you hear the distant whistle of a falling bomb and hold your breath. Sometimes it's just thunder. Sometimes it isn't. When the sirens sound, you wake up immediately, heart pounding, grabbing your gas mask, and stumbling in the dark toward the shelter. But even on calm nights, the air is never still. The house creaks and shifts. Rats scurry in the walls. Your brother talks in his sleep. The dog barks at nothing. You curl tighter, trying to stay warm, trying not to scratch, trying to ignore the bite on your ankle that's already swelling into a welt. The shelter isn't much better. During heavy raids, you sleep underground, in a dugout behind the house, lined with tin and smelling of mold. The ground is always damp. You lie on cots made of canvas and metal, which sag in the middle and squeal every time someone turns over. You wrap yourself in your coat and try to ignore the snoring, the crying baby, the cough that sounds worse every night. Some families have bunk beds. Yours does not. But once during evacuation, you stay with a woman in the country who has a proper bed, with a proper mattress, springs and stuffing and sheets that smell like lavender. You lie in it like a queen, afraid to move, afraid to leave an imprint. The woman tucks you in and calls you duck. You never forget her. You never forget that bed. Back home, your sheets are washed monthly, maybe. They're boiled in a cauldron, wrung out with a wooden mangle, and hung over the fireguard to dry. They come back stiffer than before, still faintly stained, still slightly grey. But they smell clean, or at least cleaner. You press your face into them and pretend it's enough. Over time, you adapt. You learn to sleep through itching, through creaking, through sirens. You learn which corner of the mattress is least lumpy. You learn how to tuck the blanket just so to keep out the drafts. You learn to breathe shallowly when the pillow smells especially musty. You learn not to flinch at the tickle of movement across your foot. You sleep, not deeply, not peacefully, but you sleep. And in the morning, when you rise and stretch and check for new bites, you smile faintly because you're still here and the bedbugs haven't won. Your hands are never truly clean. Not because you don't try, heavens you do, but because dirt finds you. It hides in the folds of your knuckles, nestles under your fingernails, and clings to your palms like a second skin. By now, your daily life is centered around work. Not schoolwork, though you do some of that too, but the kind of work that leaves your fingernails black, your cuticles raw, and the backs of your hands red and chapped from cold water and harsh soap. You spend your days helping wherever you're needed. Often, that means long hours in the munitions factory, if you're old enough, or in one of the auxiliary roles girls your age are handed when the grown women are needed elsewhere. Your job isn't glamorous. It involves grease, soot, flour, or mud, depending on the day. And no matter what you touch, it leaves a mark. The grime of wartime labor is specific. It's not just regular dust. It's the kind that seeps into your pores and stays there no matter how hard you scrub. After a day sorting scrap metal or wrapping munitions, your fingertips are dark gray, as though they've been dipped in coal ink. The pads of your fingers grow rough. You start using your apron as a makeshift towel, wiping your palms over it every few minutes out of habit. Soon your apron becomes a tapestry of smudges. Grease from the conveyor belt, flour from the bakery shift, black streaks from engine parts. There are no rubber gloves. If they exist, you've never seen them. You use your bare hands for everything. Hauling crates, scrubbing walls, stirring vats, picking up shards of glass because the broom went missing. You've cut yourself more times than you can count. And each time, the wound gets dabbed with iodine that stings worse than the injury. A strip of cotton, a bit of gauze, sometimes a piece of cloth torn from the hem of your own dress. You carry on. The air in the factory is thick, metallic, tangy. You taste it in your mouth at the end of the day, like iron shavings on your tongue. It settles on your skin, in your hair, in the folds of your sleeves. You wash your face in the sink with sloshed water that's been reused 4 times already. You dry your hands on your skirt. You tie your hair back tighter. There's no time to be delicate. You develop calluses on your palms, blisters on your fingers. You learn how to pull a sliver of metal from under your nail with a sewing needle, and no complaint. You don't flinch when the soap stings. You just grit your teeth and keep going. The soap itself is a sad little bar, gritty with age, sometimes wrapped in newspaper to keep it from falling apart. It's not moisturizing. It's not scented. It doesn't lather. It just strips your skin raw and leaves you smelling faintly of hospital corridors and army boots. But it's soap, and soap is sacred. Sometimes your mother slices it into thin wafers so it lasts longer. You use 1 sliver a week, like a holy relic. There's a sink in the corner of the factory. It has 1 tap, cold of course, and a bowl stained brown from rust and the passage of too many hands. You queue for it. Everyone does. You splash your hands, rub the soap between your palms until it disappears, then rinse quickly before the next girl shoves you aside. You dry your hands on your coat lining, or your scarf, or nothing at all. In winter, your hands crack. Deep red fissures open on your knuckles. The cold air bites at them. You try to hide them in your sleeves, but the fabric is rough and only makes things worse. Your mother gives you a tin of salve, homemade, lard-based, thick and sticky. It smells like old meat and makes your hands shine. You apply it in the dark, under the covers, hoping it'll work by morning. It never quite does. Nails are a constant problem. They split, they peel, they turn black at the edges. You try to clean under them with the corner of a hairpin. It helps briefly. Then you return to work, and the grime returns with you. You stop caring. You let them be. Some girls file their nails with the edge of a matchbox. One paints hers with black polish so the dirt doesn't show. Another glues bits of paper under hers and calls it fashion. You just keep yours short. Less surface for the world to cling to. After a full day of labor, your face is streaked with sweat and soot. Your arms ache. Your shoulders are tight. But your hands feel like stone. Heavy. Raw. Dull. You soak them in a bowl of warm water when you can, adding a pinch of salt or a splash of vinegar if available. It stings. It always stings. But it reminds you that you're still flesh. Sometimes you dream of gloves. Not the woolen ones you wear in winter with holes at the fingertips, but proper gloves. White, soft, smooth. The kind worn by ladies in magazines. Gloves that say, "I don't work with my hands." You imagine pulling them on, finger by finger, hiding your cracked knuckles and yellowed nails. You wake up, flex your fingers, and find another blister blooming on your palm. On Sundays, you try to look presentable. You scrub your nails with an old toothbrush, push back your cuticles with a matchstick, rub lemon peel on your fingertips to disguise the smell of oil. You hold your hands in your lap during church, palms down, trying not to be noticed. You pray with them, folded neatly, hiding the calluses. And when someone touches your hand, an older woman at the market, the boy who helps you carry potatoes, you flinch. Not because it hurts, but because you're embarrassed. Your hands aren't soft. They're not delicate. They are the hands of someone who works, someone who survives. Later, when the war is over, you will carry those hands with you. They will be your story, your scars, your proof. They won't always be beautiful, but they will always be yours. Soap becomes currency. You dream of it, you count it, you save it. A full bar is rarer than eggs, more precious than cigarettes, and nearly as cherished as a good pair of shoes without holes in the sole. If someone gives you soap as a gift, you treasure it like it's perfume from Paris. Because real bathing, actual bathing, isn't a daily ritual anymore. It's an event, a production, a blessed, complicated thing that depends on coal, water, and luck. By this point, your skin holds memories. Layers of dust, dried sweat, ration shop air, ash from the stove, flour from the pantry, soot from the trains. You can scrub and still find a grey tinge at the creases of your elbows. A proper bath, with steam and lather, is a fantasy. Most days, you make do with what's politely referred to as a dry wash. This ritual begins with powdered talc, or more often, cornstarch, or baking soda, or even fine sawdust if you're desperate. You sprinkle it in your underclothes, behind your knees, under your arms, and on your feet. Then you rub. Not scrub, rub. You wipe yourself down with a rough cloth, sometimes dry, sometimes dampened with lavender water if there's any left. The goal isn't to be clean. The goal is to be less filthy than you were an hour ago. Your mother shows you how to use a flannel dipped in vinegar water. It bites the skin a little, leaves behind a sharp sting, and has the added benefit of scaring off both lice and unwanted affection from the neighbor's boy. The vinegar trick becomes part of your bedtime routine. It leaves you smelling faintly like salad dressing, but you tell yourself it's crisp and refreshing. On Saturdays, if there's enough coal and everyone's worked hard, the bath is drawn. Not a deep bath, not a soak. Just enough warm water in the zinc tub to sit in, knees up, arms hugged tight. You go in third or fourth, depending on the week's pecking order. The water is tinged brown. Your sister's curls floated there minutes ago. But you don't complain. You lower yourself in, exhale slowly, and let the warmth rise around your tired limbs. Soap rationing means your bar is small, coarse, and dry. You wet it, work up a meager lather, and share it with whoever's next. It doesn't smell sweet, nothing floral or fruity. It smells like lye and something earthy. But it's soap, real soap. You rub it under your arms, across your legs, behind your ears, down your back as far as your arms can reach. Your mother insists on backs of knees. Always the knees, she says. You nod, even if you don't understand why. Sometimes you use powdered soap, mixed with water to form a paste, grainy and difficult. It scrapes your skin raw, but leaves you red and warm, like you've done something noble. Which, in a way, you have. Hair washing is not done every time. It's too much, too complicated. You try to schedule it around bath day, but That means eggs or salt or occasionally bread soda. You've heard of girls using rainwater with a pinch of borax. You've heard of using stale beer. You try both. One leaves your scalp dry and itchy. The other leaves you smelling like a broken pub stool. You dry off by the stove, skin steaming, wearing a towel wrapped under your arms and an old sock on your head to hold your hair. The towel is rough. It was once white, maybe. Now it's a soft grey with frayed edges and one corner that never dries. You wrap your feet in it, sit still and listen to the fire crackle while your skin tightens from the cold. If it's a special day, your birthday or Christmas, or someone comes home safe, you might get a few drops of cologne sprinkled on your wrists. Usually lavender water or something sharper, carried in a tiny bottle kept at the back of the cabinet behind the safety pins. You dab it on your pulse points and walk slowly, hoping to make it last. Some women dust themselves with powdered chalk, mixed with flour to mimic the look of pale, clean skin. Others brush themselves off with soft rags or feather dusters, sweeping away the surface filth like soot from a mantle. There's even a rumor about a girl who uses powdered milk and sugar as a facial mask. She smells like pudding. You envy her. Clothes are cleaned more than bodies. It's easier somehow. You soak your blouse, scrub the armpits, and hang it above the range. The steam makes everything smell vaguely like boiled cabbage. Still, you hold your collar up to your face and inhale deeply, searching for even a trace of cleanness. You polish your shoes with spit. You smooth your hair with lard. You buff your nails with a scrap of silk if you can find one. Clean is not about sparkle or scent. Clean is about effort, about trying, about rising above the grime, even if you can't escape it. The truth is, your body becomes background. You stop noticing the dirt under your nails. You stop staring at the ash on your arms. You begin to believe that a little sweat is just a badge of work, that a sour shirt is better than a torn one, and that nothing smells worse than hopelessness. On your cleanest day, you still carry the faint perfume of effort, of coal, vinegar, and determination. You walk down the street with your chin up, your hair scraped back, your neck freshly wiped, and you feel proud, because even if no one else sees it, you know how hard you worked for that feeling. And in a world where powder replaces water and soap is rationed like gold, feeling almost clean is a kind of triumph. By now, you've become something of an expert in the makeshift arts of beauty. Not glamour, no one expects that. But illusion? You've studied the faces of women on faded posters, with their curled hair, painted lips, and bright eyes, and wondered how they managed to look so clean, so crisp, so untouched by coal smoke and powdered eggs. Then you remember they're imaginary. What you have is spit and beetroot. Lipstick is a fantasy. Real lipstick, store-bought in a silver tube with a name like Crimson Courage or Victory Red, is rarer than bananas. But that doesn't stop you. You mash up beets in the kitchen, straining the juice through a bit of muslin saved from last year's curtain disaster. You dab it on your lips with your finger, careful not to let it drip down your chin. It stains. Not just your skin, but your blouse, your teeth, your dignity. But in the dim light of the shelter, it looks close enough to glamour. Mascara? That's easier. You spit on the corner of a burnt matchstick, rub it into the sooty edge of a coal pan, and use the tip of a hairpin to apply the mixture to your lashes. You blink furiously afterward, eyes stinging, but the effect is faintly dramatic. You once poked yourself so hard you saw stars. You cried for 10 minutes, then reapplied. Beauty waits for no one. Your rouge is even simpler. Pinched cheeks, hard, fast pinching until your skin flushes red and warm. It lasts about 20 minutes, just long enough to impress the boy who delivers the flour sacks or to make your sisters jealous. Some girls use red crayon, melted and dabbed lightly, though it has a tendency to smear in the rain. Your eyebrows are another project. Tweezers are a luxury, so you use the tip of a sewing needle, plucking slowly while squinting into a cracked mirror balanced on a windowsill. The result is often uneven. You tell yourself it's fashionable. When you overpluck one side, you fill it in with ash and water, painted on with the end of a matchstick. Powder? If you have any, it's a tiny tin of talcum with a rusty lid and a faint scent of something once floral. If not, you use flour, lightly dusted across your nose and forehead. It evens your skin tone and makes you look from a distance, less like someone who scrubs privies and more like someone who might one day get invited to a tea dance. On windy days, the powder blows off in pale puffs. You choke slightly, smile bravely, and reapply. Perfume is made from orange peels steeped in vinegar, strained through a rag and dabbed behind the ears. You once tried adding rose petals. They wilted instantly. Still, the vinegar stays. You walk around smelling like salad, but it's a fresh salad. That counts. Hair is the crown. You've mastered the rag curl. You tear old pajamas into strips, wrap your damp hair tightly each night, and sleep with a head full of knots that press into your skull like guilt. In the morning, you unwrap them with great ceremony, and if the humidity cooperates, you emerge with soft spirals. If not, your hair frizzes into something resembling a startled sheep. Either way, you pretend it's intentional. You've tried setting lotion made from sugar water. It holds the curls, but makes your scalp sticky. On one occasion, bees followed you for an entire afternoon. After that, you switch to flat beer. It smells worse, but doesn't attract wildlife. Trade-offs are a theme now. On special days, you pluck flower petals and rub them on your lips. Marigolds, daisies, anything with a bit of pigment. Your cousin once used blackberry juice. Her lips looked lovely until she sneezed and stained her entire chin. You all laughed until you couldn't breathe. Your compact mirror is missing its lid. You keep it wrapped in a scarf in your coat pocket, next to a stub of red crayon and a broken comb, with only 4 teeth left. Together, they form your kit. You carry it everywhere, like a soldier with a rifle. You may not always have food, but you'll be presentable. Some girls talk of nylons. You laugh. The only nylons you've seen in the past 2 years were on the legs of a woman in a newspaper. So, you draw lines down the backs of your own calves with a bit of burnt cork, trying to mimic the seam of stockings. You practice for hours to get it straight. Once, a neighbor boy complimented your fancy socks. You beamed for a full week. Nails are painted with beet juice, if there's enough left after your lips. Or sometimes you rub them with oil to make them shine. Sometimes you dip them in red ink and regret it immediately. The color stays for days and makes your fingers look cursed. Jewelry is scarce. You string buttons onto thread and call it a necklace. You wear a pin that belonged to your grandmother and polish it with toothpaste. You fix a broken clip with wire from a coat hanger. No one notices. Or if they do, they say nothing. Everyone's making do. You save everything. Bits of ribbon, fabric scraps, broken brooches. The ring from a lemonade bottle becomes a finger ornament. A bobby pin bent back into shape is gold. You once found a cracked powder puff in the gutter and nearly cried from joy. Beauty becomes a shared secret among girls. You swap tips like recipes. How to tint your lips with currants, how to make cold cream from lard and flour, how to curl your eyelashes with a spoon. There's pride in these tricks. They are tiny rebellions against the grime, the grayness, the daily erosion of self. And even when your hands are cracked and your dress smells of onions, you look in the mirror, trace the outline of your cheek with a bit of beetroot, fluff your curls and nod. You've made yourself lovely with nothing, and in a world held together with ration books and prayers. That's a kind of magic. Your hair is due for washing again. It's been over 2 weeks since the last time someone heated enough water to make the job feel manageable. And by now your scalp itches with a dull persistence that's somewhere between uncomfortable and maddening. You reach up, scratch absently, and a small puff of dust falls from your roots. The ends of your hair feel dry as straw, but your roots are waxy, matted flat, shiny in a way that has nothing to do with glamour. It's Sunday evening, bath day, which, if all the stars align, coal in the stove, water in the kettle, no one else sneaking ahead of you, you might just get a proper head wash. You watch the water heat, a slow process involving a blackened kettle that rattles ominously when it boils. The bath has already been used by your younger brother and your cousin. You're next. The water is tepid, slightly grey, floating with a few renegade hairs, and something unidentifiable you choose to believe is lint. Still, this is your chance. You sit on a low stool, bend your head over a wash basin, and close your eyes as your mother cracks an egg. Just one, mind you, into a chipped mug. She removes the white, which is too stringy, and swirls the golden yolk with her finger. No fork, just a swirl. It smells faintly of barnyard, faintly of potential breakfast. You lean forward. With no hesitation, she pours it over your scalp. It slides between your strands, warm and gooey, and you shiver. She massages it in with brisk, circular motions, fingers rough from scrubbing floors, rubbing until your whole head feels tacky and slick. Then comes the water, a kettle's worth of warm, rinsed over your head as she mutters, "Keep your eyes shut, girl." Because the last time, you opened them and got yolk in your lashes. There's no towel. You blot with your sleeve. Then the corner of an old flannel shirt hung nearby. You squeeze out the water with both hands and twist your hair into a loose knot, wrapping it in a piece of muslin that smells faintly of onions and dust. The egg will have helped a bit. It softens the scalp, adds a sheen if you're lucky. Or it might cook slightly from the water being too hot, leaving behind a faint scrambled smell. It's a risk, Sometimes when there are no eggs, you use soap, though it's not really soap for hair. Just the same brown carbolic bar you use for everything else. It makes your hair squeak, literally squeak. And after it dries, it fluffs out around your face like an angry halo. You try to tame it with spit, or with lard if it's meat week and there's anything left in the tin. There are other methods too. You once used flour to absorb grease, rubbing it into your roots and brushing it out with a comb. The flour clumped. Your hair turned gray. You looked 72. Still, you smiled. Rainwater is the gold standard. You set out a bucket on clear nights, hoping to catch enough for a proper rinse. Rainwater is soft, clean, and doesn't leave your hair feeling like you dipped it in chalk dust. On a good day, you mix it with a splash of cider vinegar and rinse twice. You don't dry your hair with heat. There is no heat, but you sit near the stove, turning slowly like a soggy loaf. After a wash, your scalp feels tight. Your hair, now light and fluffy, floats around your head in soft waves. You comb it out with care, starting from the ends. The comb has a tooth missing in the middle, so you have to adjust your grip. You pull gently through the knots, muttering, "Sorry, sorry" to yourself, like you're apologizing to your own scalp. It helps. You know girls who braid their wet hair and sleep in rags for curls. Some girls with shorter hair pin it into rolls, hoping for something vaguely Veronica Lake-like. You just want it to stay out of your eyes. You twist it into a bun and pin it back with clips you scavenged from under your aunt's bed. One is bent, one is slightly rusty. You ignore that. In the summer, your hair clings to the back of your neck. In winter, it freezes if you wash it too late and step outside. You once touched your fringe in the cold and heard it crackle like dry leaves. You wore a scarf for a week afterward. Scalp hygiene is hit or miss. Lice still lurk. You check with your fingertips every few days, feeling for the telltale bumps. If they're back, it's more vinegar, or paraffin, or dusting powder that smells like funeral homes. You sit still as your sister parts your hair into neat rows and goes through with a net comb. Click, flick, wipe, repeat. You think you hear them laugh sometimes, the lice. It's their house now. On days when your hair feels clean, truly clean, you walk differently. You lift your chin. You turn your head slowly so the curls bounce. You pretend you're on a stage or in a newsreel. You feel your hair catch the light, even if it's just from a window, even if it's just imagined, and even when it's not clean, even when it's stiff with beer or clumped with flour or tangled beyond logic, you still do your best. You tame it with a ribbon, braid it tight, tuck it under a scarf. You learn to make do, to improvise, to survive, because when the world gives you egg yolks and vinegar, you make shampoo. And when that shampoo runs down your back, warm and sticky, and your hair smells faintly of breakfast, you laugh quietly, because somehow, impossibly, you're clean. For now. By now, your clothes hang differently. Your frame is filling out. Hips rounding, shoulders squaring, chest no longer the blank canvas it once was. And as your body changes, so too does your relationship with underwear. You no longer wear what your mother gives you without question. You inspect, adjust, complain, secretly swap. And at the center of it all, the bloomers, bras, and petticoats, passed down from cousin to cousin, like sacred heirlooms, too tragic to throw away. Your underwear drawer, if you have one, is more a pile than a collection. It contains precisely 2 bras, both inherited. One has straps made from repurposed elastic garters. The other is patched with fabric from a curtain, slightly floral, slightly itchy. They fasten with mismatched buttons instead of hooks, and you've trained your fingers to fumble them closed behind your back, like a magician performing a tired trick. The bras don't fit. They never fit. One digs in under the arms, the other sags like a hammock after a rainstorm. There's no underwire, no padding, no lace. Just stiff cotton, faded seams, and elastic that surrendered long ago. You've tried adjusting them with safety pins, knots, even string. Once, in a moment of desperation, you tied the straps with a hair ribbon. It held, but only until midday, when the whole arrangement slid out of alignment and turned sideways under your blouse. You walked home with your arms folded tightly across your chest, vowing never to wear ribbons again. Petticoats are even older. Hand-me-downs from hand-me-downs. Some are so thin, they might as well be shadows. Others are thick and stiff, made from old sackcloth or worn-out tablecloths dyed with tea. They bunch at the waist, chafe your thighs, and never quite fall evenly around your legs. One has a permanent diagonal tilt, like it's trying to escape. You wear it anyway. And the bloomers, oh, the bloomers. Voluminous, sagging things that flap slightly when you walk. They're patched in more places than they're whole, tied various shades of gray and brown, depending on whatever cloth was available at the time. The elastic waistband is gone, replaced by a drawstring that tightens unevenly and leaves a permanent dent across your stomach. You've worn bloomers with 3 different family initials stitched into the waistband. Sometimes the thread is pink, sometimes blue. Once, disturbingly, it was red. You don't know who sewed it, or how long ago, or what stories these undergarments might tell if they could speak. You don't want to know. On wash day, the underwear goes into a special basin, boiled separately from the rest of the laundry, with vinegar or ash soap or whatever cleaning agent hasn't yet run out. You stir them with a long stick, like a witch with a cauldron. You pray over them. You hope the fabric holds. You hang them discreetly on the inner line, behind the dresses and socks, hidden from nosy neighbors and teasing brothers. A gust of wind once lifted your bloomers straight over the garden wall and onto a passing cart horse. You retrieved them in silence, your cheeks the color of boiled beetroot. Sometimes there isn't enough underwear to go around. When laundry hasn't dried, or there's been a sudden rain, or the coal's all gone and the fire won't light, you go without. You learn to make do with extra layers, longer skirts, carefully positioned pins. You walk carefully. You pray for dry benches, for your first attempt at sewing your own underthings is disastrous. You follow a pattern from a pamphlet your mother found in the bottom of a drawer. The lines are faint, the measurements cryptic. The result is a garment so oddly shaped that even your youngest cousin asks if it's a flag. You wear it once, then repurpose the fabric into handkerchiefs. Elastic is the true treasure. If anyone has elastic, they guard it fiercely. You hear rumors of girls who trade chocolate for spare garter strips. You consider it. Briefly, But the chocolate is too valuable, and your dignity too frayed already. Stockings are barely worth discussing. If you have a pair without holes, they're probably from before the war. If not, you mend them nightly, darning and patching until your legs resemble a patchwork quilt. You draw lines down the backs of your calves with a pencil stub to simulate seams, trying to keep them straight, despite the tremble in your hand. Your best bra, the one with the least fraying, gets reserved for Sundays. You air it out overnight, fasten the loose threads with a bit of spit, and wear it under your least wrinkled blouse. You walk a little taller. You don't scratch as much. You almost forget it's made from parts of 3 different bras, stitched together with the stubborn hope of a girl who refuses to give up. In school, girls talk in whispers about undergarments. One claims her aunt has a real brassiere, with hooks and satin straps and lace trim. Another says her cousin received silk French knickers in a Red Cross parcel. You don't believe her. You've never seen silk. You think it might be a kind of soft metal. When you begin to understand how your body is noticed, you grow more aware of how it's dressed. You tug your blouse forward, pull your skirt down, tighten the ribbon in your hair. You try to smooth the lines of your bra, fold your arms over your chest when walking past the baker's son, even though he mostly stares at the bread. But deep down, beneath the layers of cotton and compromise, you carry a quiet pride. These undergarments have been repaired and re-repaired. They've endured washings, tears, growth spurts, and accidents. They are ugly, yes, but they are sturdy. They have survived, like you. One day, maybe, you'll own something new, something just yours, with tags, with elastic that snaps instead of stretches. Until then, you keep tying knots, patching holes, and folding your dignity into every stitch. Because even in borrowed bloomers and a borrowed world, you walk like a girl who belongs. Winter settles in with quiet menace. It doesn't arrive in a dramatic swirl of snow or a cinematic frost on the window panes. No, it slips into the room gradually, through the cracks in the walls, under the door, through the seams of your worn shoes, and the threadbare sleeves of your borrowed coat. The floorboards grow cold beneath your feet. Your breath puffs visibly in the mornings, and the wash basin water develops a thin film of ice if left too long untouched. And it is in this chill that you come to know a new kind of discomfort, the kind that starts in your toes and creeps up into your bones. Socks become essential, not accessories, not afterthoughts, necessities, sacred. You own perhaps 2 pairs, one of which has more holes than fabric, and the other, which has been darned so many times, it's developed a personality. They are never quite dry. They smell permanently of damp wool and determination. Each morning, you choose the least wet pair, warm them near the fire, if there is one, and pull them on quickly before they can cool. But when your last good pair wore thin at the heel and tore open in one final woolly sigh, your aunt produced something odd. Socks knitted from dog hair. You stared at them, not quite believing. They were beige and wiry, with the faint musky scent of a sleepy collie. Soft once worn in, she promised, handing them to you like treasure. You pulled them on and found they prickled like straw, left fluff on your ankles, and gave you a static shock when you touched the stair railing. But you wore them anyway. Wool was rationed. Yarn was saved for uniforms and official knits for the front. So socks were fashioned from anything with even a hint of fiber. Unraveled jumpers, scraps of felted skirts, and yes, the clippings from the family dog, combed, spun, and stitched into foot warmers that barked only slightly when you walked. You learned to knit your own, eventually. Sitting by the dim firelight, with needles borrowed from your grandmother, and yarn scavenged from old mittens, you dropped every third stitch and created sock shapes that bent unexpectedly in the middle. Still, they kept your toes warm. That was enough. When it snowed, and it did, lightly but bitterly, you wrapped your feet in newspaper before putting on shoes. The ink sometimes stained your soles, and you'd find headlines from the war printed faintly across your arches. Frontline advances, coal shortages, victory possible by summer. You liked that one. It made your toes feel hopeful. There were no boots, not real ones, just your regular shoes, stiff with age, with cardboard insoles and laces that had been knotted 5 times where they'd snapped. You brushed them with a mixture of soot and grease to keep them looking decent. When the snow melted and soaked through, your dog hair socks puffed up and smelled more canine than ever. Inside, your feet rarely touched the bare floor. It was too cold. You shuffled around in someone else's slippers, 2 sizes too big, held together with string, or wrapped your feet in rags and secured them with safety pins. At night, you'd tuck your feet into a shared blanket, pressing them against your sister's calves and pretending not to feel guilty. There were tricks to staying warm. You heated bricks in the fire and wrapped them in flannel for the foot of the bed. You warmed your socks on the stove and put them on just before leaving the house. You tucked your legs under yourself, sat on your hands, wore 2 pairs of knickers layered for insulation. None of it worked entirely, but it was something. Chilblains were common. Your toes swelled, turned red, then purple, then numb. You rubbed them with whatever was available. Goose fat, camphor oil, a dab of leftover cold cream. You gritted your teeth and tried not to cry when the feeling came rushing back. Some girls got frostbite. One limped for weeks. Another lost a toenail that never really grew back. You learned to listen to your feet. The dull ache of cold, the sharp sting of returning blood flow, the quiet, creeping numbness that could mean something worse. Your socks, ragged as they were, became something precious. When one pair was being washed, boiled in a pot with lye and soap shavings, the other was hung near the fire to dry. You watched them closely, terrified they'd scorch or catch, and held your breath each time someone passed too close. Eventually, you began to mend them, not just with thread, but with pieces of old felt, cut into ovals and sewn across the soles like makeshift armor. They looked ridiculous. They worked. Once, a parcel arrived from someone's cousin in Canada. Inside, a pair of socks. Real socks. Thick, soft, knitted with proper wool. The kind that felt like clouds and smelled faintly of cedar. The girl who received them cried. She wore them for 3 days straight, and no one said a word. You've stopped caring about matching pairs. You wear one green, one brown, one ankle length, one up to your knee, one inside out, one with a hole in the heel. So long as they're warm, so long as they stay up. You dream sometimes of walking barefoot through clean grass, of shoes that fit, of socks that never itch. But for now, your reality is the scratch of wool, the pinch of cold, and the quiet pride of making something last one more week. You don't need fancy socks. You need socks. And so you wear them, patched, prickly, handmade, dog-haired, and dignified. Because warm feet mean one less thing to worry about. And that, in this life, is a rare and beautiful gift. It's just after sunset when the sirens start again. That long, low, rising wail that winds its way through the alleys and courtyards like a ghost, warning everyone it's time to vanish. You know the sound well. You've heard it in your sleep, during your supper, once even in the bath. By now you don't startle, you just move. Your family gathers with tired efficiency. The gas masks are snatched up. Blankets are thrown over shoulders. A tin of biscuits is shoved into someone's coat pocket, already half crumbled. You carry your small torch, the one with the dim bulb and the cracked lens, and follow the well-trodden path out the back door, through the garden, past the leaning fence, and down into the public shelter at the end of the street. It's a damp, slumping concrete box, partly underground, partly forgotten. Inside, it smells of mildew, iron, and old boots. The air is thick, unmoving. Dozens of bodies squeezed together on wooden benches and cold metal cots. Someone's dog barks. A baby begins to cry. And the door creaks shut behind you with the dull finality of a vault sealing itself. This is where you'll sleep tonight. Again. There is no privacy. No warmth. The walls are slick with condensation, and your breath fogs in front of you as you exhale. Everyone smells of wool, sweat, unwashed hair, the faint sharp tang of fear. You shuffle to your usual spot, a corner beneath a dripping pipe, and lay down your coat on the floor. That will be your mattress. Your mother gives you half a blanket. That will be your quilt. You curl into a ball and try not to touch the wall, which feels like the inside of a cold mouth. The bodies are packed tight, knees bump, shoulders brush. One woman breathes loudly through her mouth, wheezing with each inhale. A man across the aisle removes his boots with a long groan and reveals socks that could walk home on their own. You pinch your nose and smile to yourself. It's better to laugh than cry. Sometimes people sing. Old war songs, lullabies, hymns. It begins softly. One voice, then two. Then a hum spreading through the shelter, like smoke. The melody makes the ceiling seem less low, the walls less close. You sing too, quietly, even though your throat is dry, and your teeth chatter with cold. You try to sleep. You wrap your scarf around your face to block out the smell. You tuck your hands under your arms for warmth. You place your feet beneath your sister's legs and press your cheek to the hard concrete. You close your eyes and count breaths. Not sheep, just breaths. Yours. Then your sister's. Then the woman beside you. The rhythm is lulling, almost peaceful, almost. Then come the thuds, not loud, not close, but present, dull, distant, like someone dropping furniture 2 streets over. You freeze. Everyone does. A pause hangs in the air, heavier than anything else in the room. You wait. 1 second, 2, nothing. Someone coughs. The baby wails. Life resumes. You fall into a shallow sleep, full of strange dreams. of school desks sinking into water, of soap that grows legs and runs away, of warmth that disappears just as you reach it. You wake when someone stirs nearby, or when the cold seeps too deep into your spine. Sometimes the all-clear sounds before dawn. Sometimes not until after. Either way, when it comes, it's like being lifted from underwater. You stretch your aching limbs, roll onto your side, and blink into the grey light that slips through the narrow slats near the ceiling. The shelter empties slowly. Everyone stiff, silent, eyes hollow from another restless night. You gather your things. Your tin biscuit is now crumbs. Your scarf is damp. Your socks are colder than when you put them on. Outside, the world looks unchanged. The same cracked pavement, the same foggy windows. But sometimes there's new rubble, a missing rooftop, a tree with its bark peeled off by shrapnel. You avoid looking too closely. Back home, the routine begins again. You shake out your coat. You light the fire. You boil water, if there's any coal left. You comb your hair with fingers that still feel numb. You pretend you slept well. You pretend you're not tired. You pretend nothing happened, but deep down your bones are sore. Not just from the cold ground, but from the closeness. The air, the fear, the knowledge that every night might be the one that doesn't end with sunlight. Still, you keep going. You line your boots by the door, ready to grab. You keep your gas mask close. You sleep in your clothes. You refill your biscuit tin. You choose the warmest corner. You hug your sister, tighter, and you go back to the shelter the next night, and the next, and the next, because that's what you do. That's what everyone does. You survive, sweaty, cramped, sore, but whole, and when the bombs fall, you do not run. You lie close to others, hold your breath, and wait for silence, because silence means another day. And another day means one step closer to peace. You grow older, quieter, tougher in ways that don't show. The grime under your fingernails no longer embarrasses you. The stink of old wool and vinegar no longer makes you flinch. You've worn the same bra so long, the seams have learned the shape of you. Your body has changed, hardened, softened, carried weight and burden in different places, but the rituals remain. Rinse, pin, powder, pray. Your last years are quiet, but never idle. You move slower now, joints stiff, back curved. Still, you wash with a rag in a cracked bowl. You still spit polish your shoes, mend your knickers with thread pulled from old pillowcases, and trim your fingernails with dull scissors once used for trimming ration stamps. The powdered bath returns, not as necessity, but as habit. You no longer expect luxury. A cloth in a kettle will do. You smile as the steam rises in the basin, cloudy with age. You live alone now. Your siblings have moved. Some didn't make it through the war. You think of them when you fold your underthings, still careful, still precise. You sit near the window and darn your last good socks, while the rain taps gently on the glass. Your hands shake, but the needle still finds the hole. Your closet is simple. A coat for church, 2 dresses, 3 pairs of bloomers, one with a stain you've long stopped apologizing for. You wear them in rotation, not because you must, but because you see no reason to change. They've walked every season with you. When illness comes, it is slow, like the war itself, creeping, persistent, uninvited. The doctor visits. You nod. You take your pills with a chipped enamel cup filled with lukewarm water. The same cup you once used to rinse out your vinegar hair rinse. Everything reused, everything remembered. You die on a Tuesday. The sun is out. Your hands are folded, your hair tied in a soft braid, like you wore it when you were 16. You smell faintly of rose powder and carbolic soap. The nurse who finds you says you looked peaceful. She notices your feet tucked neatly together, socks still rolled to the perfect height. She doesn't know they were knitted from dog hair. She wouldn't understand. Your last breath is soft. Your last thought, not of bombs or boots or blood, but of the steam from a tin bath, the tickle of powder on your chest, the sweet sting of beetroot on your lips, and the joy of being almost, nearly, wonderfully clean. And now, as the coal lifts from the stone walls, and the lights dim behind shuttered windows, you drift further away from the scratchy wool and vinegar towels, from the faint perfume of boiled cabbage and soot. The steam from your weekly bath fades into the background like a misty memory, no longer stinging your skin or fogging the mirror. You're warm now and soft, wrapped not in frayed rags or rationed flannel, but in the quiet glow of rest, of stillness. The lice combs have been set down. The beetroot stains have faded. The dog hair socks have unraveled into dust. No more vinegar rinses, no more paraffin on your scalp, no more careful scrubbing of bloomers in cold basins, while frost creeps along the windowsill. There is only quiet now, deep, woolen, and kind. You remember the laughter, too. Quiet snickers during air-net checks. The proud triumph of walking home from school with your curls still holding shape. The thrill of catching your reflection and thinking just once that you looked nice, even beautiful, despite the powdery residue, the cracked soap, the safety pins in your waistband. That version of you still stands. Somewhere. Young and scrappy, brushing flour off her knees and pretending not to care. Let her rest now. Breathe out. Let the fog lift. You're clean, you're done, and no one can take that from you now. Sleep well, you stubborn, wonderful, beetroot-lipped creature. You made it.